Hello, everyone. Women on the Move Book Club. We are going to discuss another phenomenal book tonight, and we just want to introduce ourselves. And today is Thursday, January the 30th, and the year is 2025. I'm Cindy.
Um,
I'm Angie.
I'm Harriet.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Vivian.
All right, so tonight's host is Sam. So I will turn it over to her and she will lead this illustrious discussion. So, Sam, the floor is yours.
Okay, my book tonight is The Personal Librarian, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. It was a phenomenal book, it's, in my opinion. It's fiction, but it's also historical in that there was a lot of fact in it. Belle de Costa Green was a real live person, and she was a personal librarian to J.P. Morgan. Uh, Bell was raised to become one of the most influential figures of libraries and rare books. She was the daughter of Richard Greener, who was the first Black um, graduate of Harvard. He was the first American graduate, and she faced numerous challenges within her life. But throughout her life, she was extremely determined, and I think that's one of the things that I'd like to discuss tonight. Is what do you think made her as determined as she was? Was it her upbringing, or was she a product of our culture at the time, or was it just a product of her upbringing by her mother and her father? Her father was an activist who was very active in the community, in his community, which was a Black community. Her mother, even though she loved her father, her husband, she was not as active. So, what do you think was the reason, some of the reasons for Belle to be as determined as she was?
I think part of it was upbringing, and then she was brought up with parents who were very intellectual. So when you grow up in that type of environment, there's no less than mentality, there's more than. So
hmm
I think that she was a product of her environment, and it said that she had impeccable taste and shrewd negotiating. This was when she was at the peer Morgan Library, but I truly believe it was her upbringing. And if you're brought up in an environment where excellence is expected, typically you rise to the occasion.
hmm
I agree, but I also think it was a matter of necessity. She became basically the breadwinner for the family.
Yes.
And through her mother's encouragement, she had to continue her facade of being white in order to keep that family afloat.
Right.
So I think it was the upbringing, but it was also a matter of necessity.
Yes.
Well, I want to say thank you to Sam because I agree, this was an amazing book. Every bit of it. And even though it wasn't a fictionalized account of a real person, the people were real. I mean, you saw the goodness in them and the problems they had. You saw the whole person, you know. Um, I think, I mean, clearly, a bright woman from a bright family. Her mother was a musician too,
Mhm.
which I think, musicians always tend to have a way of really thinking things through in a different way. But intellect rises. When you have it, you can't stomp it down. You can't dumb yourself down. You can't not know what you know. And she was given so many benefits from having parents who, like her father, would take her places and talk to her about things. And that really made her important in his eyes, but also in her own eyes. And when you have those kind of tools, you're smart and you believe in yourself, then the rest kind of follows. And for her, that really was a difficult path because even with those assets, there weren't going to be many things open to her if she didn't find her way, which was the story.
Well, do you think that her passing for white made her more free or less free?
Yeah. That's, we wouldn't know her if she didn't,
Yeah.
it's part of who she was. And I think that was one of the things that I had down in my different themes that I saw come up was the secrecies that crippled them, that made them who they are, pushed them forward, but also crippled them because it didn't open them up to loving as much as they could in the world. Because of all the little secrets, and there were so many throughout the book, little things that kind of unfolded, and she would say, "I wish I knew that before," or nobody knew about her, and you'd think, well, if they knew that about her, they may have understood, so.
Yes. One thing that really struck me from your question, Sam, was her determination. She saw her parents. Her mother was determined that she was not going to expose her children to certain things from living in the segregated South. So she moved without resources and all this stuff to New York so that because she determined her children were going to have more opportunities. And then even the determination of her father that he felt that the plight of the Black man in that time in history was so bad, that was such they were so marginalized and all these other things that happened, that he was determined he wanted to help move the notoriety of the race and the intelligence of the race and the contributions of African Americans to not only medicine and science and the arts. He was determined to the point where he gave up his family because of his conviction. So I think part of her determination came from watching her parents being confident in the convictions that they had. That gave her the strength to move forward, even when she was, J.P. Morgan's daughter, Anna, came up against her. She still was determined that you are not going to, just because of you think I'm less than, I don't think that, and you're not going to treat me like that.
Correct.
So
but she had some poignant times that occurred. One thing I want to mention, when you think about the parents splitting, they decided to do this so he could pursue his ambitions, because like Harriet said, he had his convictions, but the mother had her convictions too. Hers was, we have to pass as white to succeed. The mother was as adamant about passing as white as the father was as adamant about advocating for rights for Blacks. So you have these two individuals who came together, and it eventually broke them apart. And that was just something right there. But I did the thing that where Belle, it really, when you live in a world where you're passing, it kind of becomes second nature to you. But when they took that train trip and they went to Washington, D.C., oh my, she got, her eyes were open big time. Because they got on that train, she thought, thinking they were white, they were Black on the train. And when they got off, and she saw differences. I think that was her first eye-opening experience,
right?
Where
it just hit her in the face.
Yeah, that was probably one of her big aha moments. But eventually, I think, didn't her brother, I believe Teddy, he also passed. eventually they all kind of went into, I guess, a protective mode for themselves so they could become who they wanted to be. So they thought they were a little freer. But what was the important lesson was there a lesson that we learned from this? Is passing the way? Because our society has changed now, and we're going back to some of those things because there are some people who you wouldn't know. And that was one of Belle's fears, that the servants would know. She would, it's kind of like sometimes we know who you are. And that must be very difficult to live with on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
Getting up every single day knowing that somebody might find me out. I suspect, this is me personally, that Anna, J.P. Morgan's daughter, knew. I really suspect that she knew, but she also had secrets.
Correct.
Exactly.
And that's why she wasn't revealing what Belle's secrets were, because she didn't want her secrets to be found out.
Right.
Exactly. And that's why through history, a lot of Black women who did pass as white in society and even married white men, they would not have children.
Exactly.
And they made it so they couldn't have children because the baby, could come out and then it would be known. So when you think about it, it's like, in one sense, Sam, the answer to your question, it's more freeing in terms of opportunities that they have, but then it's like they're in a prison at the same time because you're hiding. And then we know JP Morgan is like, he was attracted. There was a chemistry there.
There was a chemistry there. And the book did not really say that anything really happened, but you always suspected. There was always those little innuendos that you thought, well, maybe something did and maybe something didn't, because he was a womanizer. I mean, that was very clear.
I kind of got the feeling, though, that Belle was very protective of herself. And although she admired him to the point that it felt like love, when you talk about the passing, she has that whole piece. I think it's at page 2. Let me see. It's where JP Morgan is talking to her about, like I own you. And she's like, you don't own me.
Yes.
And she's thinking, I'm sorry, I know when I go to bed, here it is, it's on 247, like at the very top, when I put my head down at night, I am colored as the first enslaved African men and women who landed in this country 300 years ago. So it's something that she never forgot. I mean, and so that's why she never let anybody know. She didn't let Bernard know. Didn't matter how close they were going to get. She was never going to say. And she was never going to cross that bridge for him anyways on his secrets,
But guess what? She thought about it with Bernard. Remember?
Yes, she did.
I was so glad she didn't, because that relationship went south and that would have been her downfall.
And that's the whole thing. She knew that all, and her mother kept saying, you are being too risky. You are being too risky, because you tell one person and it's over for all of us. And so he was so protective of that she could not know. I mean, not remember every minute of the day that she was, she had that around, that secret that she had to keep,
There was one part in the book where she did mention that she's glad she never told him.
Yes.
Yes.
Because she knew then when she found out what he was really about, she knew he didn't care about me or love me enough to shelter me. He would have used this against me.
Correct.
So, she knew once she found out what he was really about.
And wasn't it interesting? JP, he was even jealous of Bernard. He didn't like him because he saw, what was going on with him. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a hot mess.
He had 4 mistresses and a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you think she should have handled that situation with Bernard? Did she do it? I mean, you can't, you love who you love, and there's nothing that you can do about it. And she hid her feelings for so long about so many different things. I just thought Bernard was a scoundrel who took advantage of her.
Mm-hmm.
She
He
was smart,
was.
and
He
she had a
was,
talent.
and invited his wife into that. She
Yes,
was a part of that foolishness.
Because
But
they had an open marriage.
yes.
well, because he was only after her knowledge, her stature,
Correct.
all those
Mm-hmm.
things. And you saw her falling for him, and you're like, no,
I know.
my
And then she
God,
got pregnant.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
That was so sad.
That's when he really started turning, because it's like she really knew at that point how he thought
Yes.
about her.
Her despair went in that when
Mm-hmm.
it
It
was
was
just
sad.
so sad, I thought.
I
Yeah.
couldn't believe she kept on with him after that.
Thank
After the
you.
No, nor could I.
I
Well,
was,
he really pushed to
what?
keep on, and she didn't keep on too much. So there'd be years where she said she didn't write to him, but he would keep writing and call her my Belle and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. Oh,
bunch of
Do you,
baloney.
So he
there
kind
was
of broke down her resolve.
yes, he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Because, when they first got together, she was 29 years old. And she said that was the first time that she'd ever had a romantic
Mhm.
kiss at
Correct.
Yes.
29.
Right. She was really sheltered.
So she was sheltered, she was naive, but I think that for me that was pretty much the time that she lived in. Many women were.
Mm-hmm.
Many women were very sheltered, very protected. And she just fell into that because her father, I think, doted on her and depended
Mm-hmm.
for her to be everything that she could be. Her mother expected it because that's what the fleets expect. They expect
Mm-hmm.
education. That was just an expectation. But one of the things that Belle said that I thought was very interesting, she says, with the gift of the position, I am responsible to many more. And she was talking about she was responsible to many more. Her achievements gave others hope. What do you think about that? How do you think that how she really had a lot of her father in her?
She was right.
She was.
She was right. And she even though she couldn't really tell the people that would benefit from her doing
Yes.
what she was doing, she was right. She had to keep that up.
but it was
Ex-
like we said earlier, like the servants would know if she looked at them, they would know,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So there was one time where somebody looks at her and kind of like, oh, I know what's going on here,
Yes.
you know.
Mhm.
So, I think those are, I mean, maybe that's part of it too, that she had to keep achieving. She had to be more than just a librarian, you
And
know.
that's why
Mhm.
her mother prepared
That's
her for that. Her mother told her, when
Mhm.
you come across a black person, don't look them in the eye
Correct.
and do
Mhm.
not engage in the conversation.
Right.
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 She said, stand tall, don't acknowledge when you encounter colored
Mhm.
people.
Exactly. Because
That
white
was her
people didn't
mother's.
look black people in the eye. So it's like she's passing for white. She has to act
Mhm.
that way.
right.
I just
She
want to
has to
add
remember the social norms.
exactly.
Exactly.
But I think part of Belle's passion to, of course, she loved her work, but I think she worked so hard, not only for the love of the job, but she made every moment count. Because think about it, when you live in that kind of prison, you don't know if the cards are going to tumble and fall down, your house of cards is going to fall down. So I think she lived with pushing, because you don't know when this is going to be over, because she sacrificed love, children, and family for her mother, her
Mhm.
siblings, and the love of her job.
Well, she
Yeah.
was the support of the family after
Yes.
her, especially after her father left. And one of the things that she said in the book that I thought was very interesting was she said that J.P. Morgan must believe that I am competent and capable and a white woman because he would
Mm.
not, or no one else would have accepted her during that time in that position had she not been a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think JP Morgan knew she had a secret, whatever it
He
was.
didn't know
And
what
I
it
think
was, but she knew. Hmm.
he might not have known what it was, but she pushed so hard because the one thing you couldn't take away from her would have been the past achievements. The fact that she
Right.
got this or got that, no matter what, if it ever came out, that was still going to be true. And I just loved the first scene the scene when she goes to Boston the first time she gets to go to an auction and she figures out how she's
Oh
going to
yeah.
get that piece first and she gets it. I mean, and the thing is, I mean, she was the only woman in a
In
room
the
full of
place.
men.
Thank
They
you.
didn't know that she wasn't a white woman, but just being the only woman in a room full of men who all have their own club going anyways,
Mm-hmm.
she had, I mean, that takes a lot of guts.
Well,
And
you,
I love that scene.
But
well,
Mm-hmm.
her
to me,
father was an ambassador. And I think
Yes.
some of that, I don't know if her skills, her negotiating skills were not innate.
Mm-hmm.
She just knew how to negotiate. She did that in London also.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
but you know what? To me,
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to prove herself as a valuable piece in J.P. Morgan's library. Even
Mm-hmm.
if he found out what her true race was, I think she wanted to show that she was so valuable that it
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't matter
Wouldn't
because
matter,
no one
right?
else could do
Mm-hmm.
what she was doing.
Well, that's
Right.
it. He couldn't afford to lose her. And
Right.
Exactly.
she knew
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's why those past achievements, she worked so hard for him because you're never going to take those away from her.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I
nobody could
think
have done it
I
as well.
think I think because I have to leave, but I want to make this 2 points. Number one, I think um, you're right. She had to prove herself because even when she got the position, J.P. Morgan had took some flack because they were like, you got to hired a woman for this." So we see that sexism right there. And then the other thing was uh, how much they gave up for what they achieved. And I'm more so talking about her father because he was so confident about lifting up the black race that he gave it all. He risked it and lost it all. He
Right.
lost
Yeah,
his
but
wife and his first child and his children, then the second wife and the children, and he died. None of them knew it, but I feel like they were, especially Belle, respected him because even though she missed him and missed the relationship and longed for what they had, she understood in a sense why he had to do what he did.
but to me, don't you think he was a little bit of a hypocrite?
Yes, but when she did get to see him, and then when he told her, and I guess his experience taught him differently, and she said, "Well, what would you do if in my situation? What would you suggest I do?" And he told her, "Continue to pass as white."
Mm-hmm.
Though, he was really one of the most interesting and heartbreaking characters because you could see why he'd make a decision, whether you'd agreed with it or not. And by Harriet. Um,
Bye,
Bye,
but
Harry.
Harriet.
it was just heartbreaking to see all that he lost when he had so much promise. And that when the mother retells his first job when they go to the South, to one of the Carolinas, and he's at a
Right.
university, and she says starts like on 223. She says it's a fleeting time in history when equality might have been possible, and and then how it all fell apart, and how when they left they were spit on, and driving out of town it was scary. And it was, he went there so full of hope that we are now at a point where we can make things better, and it fell apart so quickly. An election. actually, what they were saying. So that was so poignant, that whole thing. And that was the first time that the mother then talked about her loss of a child. And that kind of helped bond. I mean, I think Belle then, she didn't tell her that she, had lost her, had an abortion in England. But her mom for the first time talked about the little child that died when he was quite young, an infant. So there were so many secrets that had they shared and kind of talked about them, even within their own family, they might have felt, more understanding of each other.
That's something that some of my friends and I talk about now, how our parents and their parents kept so many secrets.
Secrets.
A lot of
Exactly.
us would know a lot more about our history if our parents weren't so secretive, or their parents weren't so secretive. And they, carry those secrets to the grave with them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, they absolutely did. I have relatives like that have passed, and an uncle just recently who said straight out, "I will take secrets to the grave with me," and none of us know. There were many things that he knew about the family that we just did not know. And I think that was their way. That was their way, their thick skin, their way of protecting themselves. They
And
thought they were
surviving.
protecting their children
Right.
And surviving.
and surviving. Exactly. And surviving. At the end, how do you feel about Belle destroying all of her letters, all of her correspondence, everything?
To keep her secrets.
To keep her
Yeah.
secrets, yes.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
I guess you don't know how long that might be something that would ruin your family would last.
Yes.
So,
Repercussions for the family. It was protecting.
yeah.
Well, and sometimes when family members would pass, they would just move away, leave their entire family and start a new life, pretty much similar to what her father did, even though he wasn't trying to pass. But he moved away and became someone else.
Yeah. But remember when they go back to Washington and how that reconnection works for a moment when they go back. And then the uncle keeps in contact with them.
Yes,
Yeah.
Uncle Mozart.
Yeah,
I loved his name.
yeah, Uncle Mozart. And he really was the glue to the family that helped her kind of know some of the things that were going on in her own family,
As I had looked at some of the pictures and some of the things that I read about the real, this was fictional but true, historical fiction. She did not look white to me, if you look at some of her pictures. And so that's why it was very difficult for me to understand why no one else knew. I think it's kind of like that. Vivian and I just had an experience where we were told what makes you white, what makes you black, and what makes you colored. And it was the pencil test, remember? And if a pencil will fall through your hair, then you're white. And that was a part of how they determined it in South Africa during apartheid.
Really. But when I was looking then into the real Belle, there were some paintings of her that were very white looking, I thought. The way her hair was pulled and things like that. So, but they were paintings or they were renderings or they were things that were doctored in a way,
Well, if you think someone is white, you will paint them as white.
Yeah,
That's true.
exactly. Uh-huh.
So you paint what your eye sees what your mind tells it to see.
Correct.
Well, and then they had that story about the Portuguese grandmother
Yes.
thing like that.
What do you think? Was there any lesson, any main lesson that we may have kind of gleaned from the book?
Life is hard.
I think
Well, one of the things that I saw was resilience and strength.
Yeah.
correct, yes.
Belle was extremely resilient, and she was skillful. She didn't know she had all these skills, but it's also she had the opportunity. And I think that oftentimes is what happens to people of color, women, or marginalized people from somebody with a disability. If you're marginalized, you can do many things once you're given the opportunity, but it was the opportunity that afforded her the ability. It was that opportunity that was there for her, in my opinion.
Almost
Do you think she
definitely
was
because
happy?
of her skill. And she wouldn't have been able to partake of that opportunity if she didn't have the skill set for it. So she really worked hard to be her best. So when you say resilient, most definitely, yes. Courageous as well.
But do you think she was happy?
To a certain
I think she went
degree.
in and out of happiness.
Right. I think she
Yes.
was really happy and proud about her work and what she did, but I think she struggled in her personal life. Because, when Bernard
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
and we all saw what was going to happen with that, but this woman is starved for affection. No one is showing her any kindness. JP just, this is work, and then his flirtations is like, but anyway, but now Bernard is showing her, romance and, stirred up feelings that she's never felt. And, she's in an emotional state that she's not let herself go to. So, yeah, that was hard.
But JP Morgan really had an affection for her because he introduced her almost as a family member.
Oh, he
He
did.
would take her to events like with his children. He had her in the will. And even one time he said, I'm not going to pull you out of the will. And she was like, well, I don't even know why I'm in the will. She's thinking, so he kind of felt that she was, because of her intellect and her passion that was the same as his, he really held her in high esteem, which I think was the closest she got to happiness, is that she felt like she was respected for what she did.
Exactly. But I truly believe if he knew, it would have been wrath because he would have felt like, this is a lie, which it really is. I've been deceived. And at that time, number one, he's hired a woman for this position and a Black woman. I don't think he would have seen it as complimentary to her skill. He would have taken it as an affront in terms of this is atrocious. It's like, I wouldn't have hired you had I known this.
Yeah. He would have thought she was making a fool out of him.
Yes.
Well, and she was introduced by his nephew. The nephew brought her
Correct.
to his attention because he noticed something.
Exactly, because they went to
And
school
he
together.
Understood her. Right. He understood her abilities. He saw that. And she wanted to make, and I suppose at the end of the day, she did. She made it one of the best libraries around.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With all of the everything that she acquired for the library.
Most definitely. She had vision. She took that library to levels that JP hadn't even thought of. But that was her love, her area of expertise. He had the money, but she expanded his vision.
Yes.
Even after death, because remember, after he died, she convinced the son
Yes.
to make this a public place. Do not make it, just open it up for everyone to see.
Right.
So that was her vision, and that was kind of her contribution to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
She acquired all of these rare manuscripts and paintings, and she wanted to make sure everyone was able to enjoy.
Exactly. And I thought it was nice that they had to work on it, but she and Jack did have a good relationship. So that was good.
Yes. What did you, I know her sister, I haven't read anything or seen anything, and I was looking for it to see if there are any relatives that are still alive, because, you know, Belle did not pass until 1950, which is really not that long ago.
Yeah.
It was in the 1950s. I think she died at age 71 in 1950.
Something like that.
I was just looking at pictures of her, and they show some descendants of her, and I would imagine it would be her siblings' children, or
That could have been.
Yeah, because she never had children.
She never had any children. And her sisters, I think Teddy didn't, he moved away.
Teddy was a sister.
Teddy was Theodore. He was the brother.
She had a sister that she called Teddy too.
Her sisters were let me see, her sisters were
the brother was sleeping on the couch.
No, Teddy was the brother. I'm trying to see if I can remember what her sisters' names were.
No, his name was Russell.
Thank you.
There was a Theodore, there was a Russell, there was a Louise, and there was an Ethel.
Where do you want to put this?
Over there.
So
I ordered those candy nuts by accident, I think.
There were 4 siblings.
She had her sister that she kind of took care of when her mother had her was named Teddy. She was named Teddy.
No,
that was her nickname.
Yeah, that was the sister. That was her
exactly.
Sister. Teddy was a girl.
Yes.
She was the fairest of them all.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Russell was the brother.
Russell was a brother, and Theodore was a brother.
No,
she only had one brother.
Yeah. I think Teddy was, and then Louise and Ethel. Louise was
Louise and Ethel. Okay, so I'm getting Teddy mixed up. I've read the book a long time ago.
The brother, she had a brother, Horace, who died when he was like...
Right, he was the youngest one.
Right.
Teddy was the youngest, wasn't she?
Yeah, I'm going to put this picture up.
He was died at a very early age.
Oh, wow.
I did see that picture.
Oh, let me see. See if you can get it.
You know what? Hold it back, Vivian, because you know you have your background.
Wait, let me change my background.
Yeah, because we can't see it.
And these are her.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, now show us. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's her at the top.
Okay.
And that's the brother on the bottom. And
yes,
you see the sisters are much more fairer than she was.
Well, that's why to me, her passing did not, I think I would have noticed right away. And I guess the servants did notice.
Right.
I found that picture.
Yes, that was another picture of her. Well, so you're saying, did someone? I didn't find any place where any of the sisters left any had any children. Are there any children, descendants left in the family? And it seems as though the Fleet family was a very large family.
Yes.
So
it's worth researching, I think.
Pardon me?
I think it's worth researching.
Yes. The Fleet family was a very large family. It would be interesting to find out, I think, some of the what happened to them of the Fleet family. I know that at her death, she had money, but I don't know who it went to.
That would be interesting too.
Because at her death, she had about $50,000. And
that was a lot
her
back
salary
then.
in 19. Pardon me?
I just said that was a lot back then.
$50,000 is the equivalent of 1.5 million
today. That was
in today's terms. So that was significant.
Definitely. Yes.
And her salary was $25,000 a year.
That was a lot back, because think about it. She wore
300,000
today. Yes, and she wore beautiful clothes. Remember, because she was going to all of those
once she had
different
money.
events.
But remember at the very beginning?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
At the very beginning, where she was trying to fix up old clothes, it was very sweet. You know?
That, like that commercial, you come a long way, baby.
Yeah.
But you know, in today's as far as money is concerned, this is way out of my league, but JP Morgan really wouldn't make the top 10 with his money. He only had $80 million, and today that would be the equivalent of 2.5 billion, which is, in terms of how wealthy some people are, you know, he's just not that wealthy in today's terms.
And then people are making so much more money.
I don't see that. Pardon me?
I was just saying people are making so much more money now. So what he made back then, that was rare then. So he was still, now in today's dollars, okay, but we're looking back then, because JP in his will left Belle 50,000, and the average person, you said she was making 25K, but the average person was making $1,000 a year, they said in the book. So
yes.
So she was doing well.
She was
doing very well. That's why her mother, one of the reasons her mother wanted her to continue, because she helped the family to live well.
Right. They had a nice lifestyle.
And to give credit. Yeah. And she continually got raises, which was I was kind of surprised that she got raises as she went along, because I would think that he would have been very cheap with her. But again, I think he valued her so much.
Yes, he did value her. I think we kind of touched upon it, but even if he had found out, I don't know that he would have gotten rid of her, because she was so necessary for his business. He may have compensated for her being Black in other ways, but I don't know that he would have gotten rid of her, or he would have told her secret.
Yeah, I don't think he'd ever, if he found out about, been the one to tell. But he was so adamant about his reputation being tied to anything she did. When she even said that she liked a Matisse, he was like, how can you say that, how could you even give that impression? Who you see, who you talk to, that reflects on me. And she's like,
correct.
Okay, how did this,
that's why
that was a crazy scene.
Exactly. That's why I think he would have been mortified, because he may have been able to accept it and get over it, but in other people's eyes, they wouldn't have. And that meant a lot to him, his reputation. I think it would have been.
They would have been talking about him.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he was very concerned about his reputation and who he was seen with, but to me, he was a little scandalous himself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
a lot scandalous.
But the
And
men
it's-
can be.
Yes.
Rich men can be.
Okay.
He felt he was
Um,
entitled. He felt he was entitled.
Okay, that's a better way to say it. He was definitely entitled. He felt he was entitled to do whatever he wanted to. And the women in his life did not complain. They accepted.
Yeah. Everything from his daughters to his mistresses to his wife, all
Yes.
of them. And the thing is, if Anna figured it out, her and her friends, then you knew that other people had to figure it out, you know.
But then the dog,
So,
Anna, think about it. Her secret was that she was a lesbian. And with the crowds
Yes.
Right.
that she hung out with, realized Anna was more worldly. Since she had that lifestyle, she probably partied and did things with people of all different races and backgrounds and came into contact and probably knew some blacks who passed as white. So she was more worldly. So I think that's how she knew.
yeah, what they call it, a Boston marriage. I had never heard that term before.
Yeah.
Nor had I.
Yeah.
A Boston. And it seemed to be during that time, I think they called Europe the continent. They were much freer to be and to do as they wanted when they were on the continent.
Yes. Well, and
When
Belle
they were
did
in
too.
Europe, when they were in Paris, when they were in London.
Exactly. Yes.
And she makes a comment about that, Belle does, about seeing people of a variety of races who were just, walking down the street or just participating in life, and was astounded by it, by the freedoms that they were enjoying.
I think America was tainted to some degree by slavery.
Yeah.
And that just, which was for economic purposes, and that just tainted everybody's mind and made them different, have different feelings or different beliefs. And in Europe, they didn't have that same type of encumberment.
Yeah. Caste. Yeah.
In conclusion, there was a quote from the book, one of the things it said, and I thought that Belle she encompassed this, is a good book is a lifelong friend, a comfort in times of sorrow, and a source of joy in times of celebration.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I thought about the book. It was definitely a comfort. It was a source of celebration. This book for me had a little bit of everything. It had romance, it had intrigue, it had mystery, it had suspense. I thought the authors did an excellent job of bringing the characters to life.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
I think it's just so interesting how two people can write a book together. It seems to be such a personal experience but they worked so well together. I mean, truly, every person, every character in this book was alive with really believable traits of humanity in them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So
And
imagine the research they had to do in order to come up with that storyline.
And then both of the authors, one was white,
That's
one
right.
is black. So that they brought their own
exactly.
experiences to the table as well. So that was very poignant as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, Sam. So
Yeah.
was
Harriet
that?
and I were talking about.
No, go ahead, Angie.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, Harriet and I were talking about how hard it would be to write together. And she said that she had seen something that Victoria Christopher Murphy was doing, where she was working with another author also. And one would write one chapter, and then the other one would write the other chapter, and then the other one would read what was written and write the next chapter, and that they would be surprised with whatever the other person wrote. And I thought, what a fun game that would be, I don't think I'd end up with a book like this if I did that with somebody I knew, but well, how creative, how interesting to tell a story.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting for them not to even live in the same city.
Right. And they didn't really meet. I think they only met by Zoom because it was during COVID.
Exactly. They
right?
only, because this was kind of, was there COVID going on then?
Yes, it was COVID.
And so they are remarkable writers. I can't wait for the movie. I'm sure it's going to be one.
I hope there is one. I really hope there is one. That'll be really something good to see.
If there is a movie, who would you have play Belle?
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see who they'd cast. I know they have something on PBS about her.
Did they?
Yes, and I just saw that they had it. It was one of those things, oh, I'm going to watch that. And then I ran out of time. Yeah.
If you find it, Angie, could you kind of let us know what the title is so that
Sure.
we can
Sure.
look at it too? I would love to see it.
I would too. I'd be very interested in seeing.
I'll see if I can find it again.
And then maybe
Exactly,
we just
'cause
text the group.
Yeah.
Yes, PBS always does really, they document and do wonderful documentaries and movies and shows. Awesome. So
Yeah.
Sam, does that conclude your book club?
Yes, that concludes my book club. Thank you all so very much. I hope you enjoyed The Personal Librarian as much as I did. I thought it was just an absolute page turner with a little bit of everything in it.
Exactly. So Sam,
Every
thank you.
genre.
Exactly. Sam, thank you again
Thank you,
for
Sam.
recommending this book. So everyone, the book we discussed tonight was The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you
It was
next time.
excellent.
What did you
Thank
say,
you.
Tammy?
It was excellent.
Yes.
Enjoyed it very much.